Hello yet again, and this is Jeti Assist episode 6, in which at long last we actually get to look at the airplane and what is happening. So we've got our gyros all set up. We've got 3 separate gain tuning knobs. We've got the on-off switch. So we've turned all the gains down to 0, and the on-off switch is at off. We've taken off, we've got the model trimmed out, nicely flying level, so we're ready to start tuning the gyro. You move the master switch to the on position, and that will then actually give you a tiny amount of reaction in the servos, but probably so little that you wouldn't notice. Even with the gain tuning knobs turned down at 0, they don't actually zero it out. So just for the sake of this demonstration, I'll turn the aileron gain up. Imagine we're flying around. I think, right, let's turning it up. I'll turn up the gain tuning knob. As I said, I tend to allocate all 3 axes to one knob. It seems to work fine for me. But just to show you the capabilities of the system, we've got them all on separate knobs. So I'll turn up the roll or aileron gain knob to the maximum. Pick up this fantastic, no expense spared training aid airplane. Can't wait for its test flight, you know, although I think the lack of fin might give it some problems. And here's our aileron servo. We're in rate mode, not heading hold mode, and as you can hopefully see as we wiggle around, so it's responding to it. Here's the elevator servo. The elevator gain is still turned down at 0, or the knob is down at 0, so it's not responding to pitch. Here's the rudder servo. It's not responding to yaw. If we turn the elevator gain up, and I will turn up the yaw gain, now we can see there is the elevator servo responding and the rudder responding to yaw. Okay, so, you know, you fly around, turn them up, and I just turn it up sometimes. In fact, in most cases, as you start to get a decent bit of gain going, you feel the model just seems to lock in or groove or whatever you like to call it. It just settles down and it's beautiful. And I tend to stop at that point. And I'm doing this at cruise speed. But the effectiveness of the controls, of course, increases with airspeed. And it could be a gain that's perfectly safe at cruise speed is too much at high speed, and you'll start to get an oscillation. And what would happen is, say it was the ailerons ended up too much gain, it would oscillate wildly like that, or in yaw, or in, worst of all, in pitch. In which case, slow down, or back off the gains and try again. So what I do, I'm doing it at my normal sort of cruise speed that I've chosen a speed at which I'm going to be normally flying the model around. And I've got a gain that seems to be working for me. I've not got oscillations. I will gently come up to full throttle in level flight, make sure nothing's oscillating still, and then with my finger on that master on-off switch, I'll go into something like a loop or a half Cuban or reverse half Cuban, whatever they are, so that there is a descending part to that maneuver where you're going to go even faster. And I'll gently wind it up to the maximum sort of speed that I ever intend to fly that model at. And if it suddenly starts oscillating, my finger can flick that master off switch straight away, because if you get a really violent oscillation, you can really quite stress the model, especially if it was going in pitch. But if I haven't got the oscillation, then the gains we've got are safe up to our maximum speed, and it's got a nice locked-in feeling. I'm happy. I quit it at that. Now, let's look at one of the interesting things you can do with the assist gyro. That's I don't know if it's impossible, but certainly a lot harder to do in other brands of gyros, and indeed impossible in many of them, where you're using, you know, a third-party gyro. And that is the case of the nose wheel steering. Here's our nose wheel steering. Remember, see, it's responding to yaw. It's responding to the rudder stick, or it would be if we do that. Here we are. So we're on the ground, and it's doing that in response to the stick, so we're steering and the gyro is helping keep you straight. Some jet models, particularly at the early start of their takeoff run, can really benefit from nose wheel gyro. Remember, jet models don't have the prop blast over the fin, and so at low air speeds the fin and rudder can be fairly ineffective. You're depending on the nose wheel, and that can get a bit light, and it's just... most of them don't need it, but there's been one or two. Certainly I had an F100, which in the early part of the takeoff run you could only do it half throttle, because it would just not steer in control if you went to full power at low speed. Okay, so we've got the gyro on the nose wheel, it's working okay. Now, it's very common when you put the wheels up to disable your nose wheel steering, and I've got one of my Jeti training videos on how you do that. It's very simple. You set a dual rate on the nose wheel steering function, which goes to 0 when you raise the undercarriage. So there we are, there's that. I switch my retracts or gear to the up position and the nose wheel no longer works. Lovely, but the gyro is still stabilizing it. You think, oh, bother. Now what am I going to do? Ha! If I remove the camera from here, yeah, I mean, just to show you, no expense spared, I have borrowed these things, helping hands used for soldering, to hold the camera. It's actually worked rather nicely, I think. Let's come back to our beastie here. Right, come into focus. Now, this is something we can alter using the flight modes. Remember that edit screen down here with all the ticks in it? What we can do is set a flight mode where the steering will be switched off. Aha, crafty. So come back out of there. So what we'd have to do now is switch the flight modes to be on the retract. See, we've got 3 possible flight modes, and come out of here, channel assignment, down to assign the additional channels, and into the flight mode channel, which at the moment is channel 7. Oh, I'm sorry about that. It's in the right there. It's my little holder impinging on the lens. Yep, channel 7 is this one, 3 positions as you can see, position 1, position 2, position 3. What I'm going to do is change that to the retracts. So simply go into it, I see edit, I don't need to clear it, I just need to edit it. I'm going to move my retract lever. There we go, it's picked it up, channel 12, the retract lever. Notice now it switches between mode 1 and mode 3. It doesn't have mode 2 because this is a 2-position switch. It doesn't have a center position, which would be position 2. So now we're going to switch between modes 1 and modes 3. Okie doke. Let's have a look at how we handle that then. Back into configuration, the flight modes. So mode 2 has become redundant. Active mode is 3 when the retracts are up. Active mode is 1 when the retracts are down. Mode 2 has become redundant to us. So wheels up, active mode is 3. Let's edit mode 3. Edit. Come down here. Come down to the steering. Go over to the yaw column, because that's what it's responding to in the yaw axis. Press the button to switch it off. Say OK. Lovely. Let's switch wheels down. And pardon me whilst I put the camera back on my makeshift tripod. There we are. Can you see that? So that's our nose wheel steering servo. I move the rudder stick, it's moving, and the aircraft yaws on the ground. the steering servo responds to the gyro to correct it. Okay, now I'm going to switch wheels up. Wheels up. I'm going to move the rudder stick. The servo will not respond because, remember, we set it to a 0% dual rate in the function. But because we've also now switched to mode 3 and we disabled the yaw input from the steering servo, it's not doing anything. So there we go. That's an example of using flight modes. And that will do it for the moment.